I just want to clear one thing up. It's called pumpkin bread, but I realized in developing it that this is a cake and people are just fooling themselves thinking that they're eating bread, but really they're just eating cake. So it's now the pumpkin cake. Today I'm going to show you how to make pumpkin bread with salted maple butter, aka the great pumpkin bread recipe of 2018. This is a quick bread. It's super simple. You need 2 bowls, 1 loaf pan, some pantry ingredients, a lot of olive oil, and that's basically it. This is the better version of that sad Starbucks pumpkin bread that's at the counter of every coffee shop. So I made a few changes to a classic pumpkin bread, namely removing the ground ginger from the mixture because I'm just not a fan, and substituting that with fresh ginger. So it's sort of like a spice cake, ginger cake, pumpkin loaf mashup. So to get started, I'm going to whisk together all my dry ingredients. I have 2.5 cups of AP flour, some cinnamon, ground cinnamon, baking powder and soda, a slight hint of ground clove. I'm going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of this grated nutmeg, freshly grated, always better than the pre-ground stuff. Smells good. And then, of course, salt. And I think there's 2 teaspoons of salt in this recipe, which is a decent amount, but it's not a salty cake, so just bear with me. I know everyone thinks I'm like the salty girl. Actually, I think they think everyone here is the salty girl, but this cake isn't salty. It's just not. It's just properly proper. Okay, so I'm going to prepare this loaf pan. Spraying it with Pam or nonstick cooking spray. And then taking a piece of parchment that's cut the width of the pan and just pressing it down in there. The spray helps to allow it to adhere to the sides. And we do this because at the end, when the cake has cooled, we can pull up on these handles and the cake will lift right out of the loaf pan. For our second bowl, this is going to be our wet ingredients bowl. So I have 1 can here of Libby's 100% pure pumpkin. And I'm going to whisk in 2 whole eggs, room temp. Always best to bake with room temp eggs unless otherwise specified. Breaking those up a bit. I'm going to whisk these together and add 1.5 cups of sugar. It's a good amount of sugar. And then once this is all combined, I'll grate in some fresh ginger. So as I said before, if you have ground ginger at your house, it's probably been there for like 5 years and it's stale, and so why not use fresh ginger instead? I think it's 4 teaspoons or a tablespoon plus a teaspoon. So you need a good 3-inch piece of ginger. Okay, 1 tablespoon fresh ginger going in, plus 1 teaspoon. Okay, I'm streaming in 1 cup of extra virgin olive oil. This should be a middle-of-the-road olive oil. You don't need to use your fancy $30 bottle of finishing oil, but you also don't want to use something that doesn't taste particularly good because there's a lot of it in there. So I'm going to fold in the dry ingredients into the pumpkin mixture little by little, just doing it in 2 waves. So you don't want to overwork this batter once the flour is in it because you don't want to overwork the gluten. It can get tough. So just until no dry spots remain. Smells like autumn. Pumpkin cakes that aren't doing it right. They're overloading it on the dried spices. Like I feel like oftentimes there's like 3 teaspoons, a tablespoon, of ground nutmeg. There'll be so much cinnamon. They're using a neutral oil that's not bringing much flavor in particular to it instead of olive oil. They probably don't have enough salt in them. All right, no lumps remain. We have a nice thick batter. And that's going to go right into the prepared pan. Road boon! All right. This is a 9x5 loaf pan. You want to make sure you use a 9x5 and not something smaller because it's a lot of batter and it's going to rise significantly and you don't want it to overflow. So if you're not sure, measure your loaf pan. And if you have a smaller one, I'd hold back a little bit of the batter so it doesn't spill over. Okay, so all of the batter is in the pan and I'm just smoothing out the top so that it bakes evenly. And then I'm going to put a 1/2 cup of raw pumpkin seeds all over the top. spreading them out evenly, and then pressing them just gently so that they adhere to the batter. And then sprinkle it with 1 tablespoon of sugar, which will get caramelized and sparkly and beautiful. All right, into a 325-degree oven for somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours. Here we go. Now we wait. So to serve with this pumpkin bread, we're going to make salted maple butter. It's the simplest, easiest. It's butter unsalted with maple syrup whipped into it with flaky salt. So I have 1.5 sticks of butter. So you could also do this with just an electric hand mixer or by hand if you're a beast. Okay, so we're going to beat this for about 4 minutes until it gets really light and fluffy and there's a lot of air incorporated into it, and it will be paler in color at that point. What makes this a pumpkin bread and not a pumpkin cake is that it's served with butter and not frosting. Otherwise, they're the same thing. Okay, scraping down. Back up. Okay, this is what we're talking about. I'm going to scrape down one more time, but this is starting to look like a pale cream colored, and I can tell that it has a lot of air whipped into it. So we're pretty close. And now I'm going to drizzle in 1/4 cup of maple syrup as we beat. And season it with 3/4 of a teaspoon of flaky salt. It's looking good. I'll transfer this to a little ramekin. All right. Whoosh. Salted maple done. I'm gonna add a little more flaky salt to the top. It's been an hour and a half, and we're gonna check on the pumpkin bread. I've been keeping an eye on it, but it looks beautiful. It has risen. The pumpkin seeds are golden brown. And we're just going to check with the cake tester and make sure that it's not wet inside. So you want to insert the cake tester into the thickest part of the loaf and pull it out and make sure that it comes out completely clean, like so. So this has been cooling for about 10 minutes, and I'm just going to use an offset spatula to help release it from the pan and let it cool further that way. And then we can unpeel and place it here to fully cool. All right, so the loaf has cooled, and we're gonna just slice it up. Perfectly cooked, looks beautiful. I'll take the butt end, even though it's not my favorite part. I need some tasters on camera then. I can't just keep eating this.
I had this when you were testing it.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah, I think
back.
one of the first iterations. Okay, you want to try it?
What's up with the butter?
Oh, it's salted maple butter.
Oh, salted maple.
Of course. It's just whipped unsalted butter with maple syrup and flaky salt.
I mean, this is like what I want for breakfast every morning, right?
Yeah, and
like
lunch and dinner.
in a consequence-free world.
You could have this.
I mean, I could in this world too,
Mm-hmm. Okay, like I said, it's a bread and a cake, so you could bake it in a loaf pan, but you could also bake this into small cake pans and frost them and make a tiered layer cake, as I did last weekend for my husband's birthday. So it's a quick bread, easy cake, basic as delicious as It's pumpkin bread. It's the great pumpkin bread of 2018. Okay, well, why don't you come back when I have something to...
Can I taste all of your mise en place?
Sure. Do you want to taste my ground clove?
We tried flour.
I've actually never tasted raw
very
flour.
Dry. Look at this.
Ugh.
Ooh, has a bad flavor.
Wait. Ew, you did not just eat that. That's baking powder.
Hey. Oh.
All of it. Stop. It's going to be delicious.
Salty?
No, that was. Is that mace? Allspice? Huh.
Nutmeg.
Nutmeg.
Oh, no, that was clove.
Oh, clove.
You obviously don't know your warm winter spices.
Also, my taste buds are assaulted by all of this. Why are you making me do this?
Okay, I have to make a a film here. It's weird to eat raw flour. Never done that before. Okay.